There were 3 coffee cups on the kitchen counter. That was the first thing that felt off. We only owned 4 total. One was mine. I drink the same dull black roast every morning. The second was hers, half full of that overpriced hazelnut vanilla she always forgets she already bought. But the third? The third wasn't from our set. It had a chip on the handle and faded blue stripes. Something you'd pick up at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. It was still warm. And that's when I noticed the drawer slightly open. The one we keep sealed like a vault. Our keepsake drawer. Inside, where there used to be baby photos and old concert stubs, was now a crumpled piece of paper with a DNA helix printed on top. No envelope. Just a sheet. Folded once, sloppily. I don't know what made me open it. Maybe instinct. Maybe stupidity. But when I did, everything changed. Non-paternal event indicated. Probability of biological paternity, 0. 0%. At first, I thought it was some kind of cruel joke. Spam. Fake lab. I mean, this stuff floats around, right? Like those scam calls pretending you want a cruise. But then I saw the names. Her name. My name. And the name of a girl who's been calling me dad for 15 years. You ever hear a soundless explosion? That's what it felt like. Everything stayed still, perfectly normal. Dishwasher humming, birds chirping outside. But inside me, everything broke at once. And then the front door opened. I shoved the paper back into the drawer and closed it just as she walked in. Hair still damp. Gym clothes on. Her voice casual, chipper, as if she hadn't just detonated my entire world. Oh, you're up early. I nodded. Didn't ask about the third cup. Didn't ask about the paper. I waited. Because if she could lie to me for 15 years, she could do it for 15 more. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not without knowing the full truth. And the full truth? It started unraveling fast. The very next day, our daughter left her phone on the couch. Normally, I'd never snoop. But nothing was normal anymore. And what I found in her texts led me to a man I'd never met. A man she called Uncle Ray. A man I'd never heard of. A man she'd been secretly messaging for months. I didn't mean to read her messages. But when your world starts to wobble, you reach for anything that still feels like truth. And in that moment, my daughter's unlocked phone felt like the only thing in the house not pretending. It was sitting on the couch, buzzing from a low battery warning. Just one message previewed on the screen. Miss you too. Same spot next week. Uncle Ray. I stared at that name for a full minute. Uncle Ray. We don't have an Uncle Ray. I know every single name in our family tree. I know it because I built it. I traced it back 4 generations when Lacey was in 4th grade for a heritage project. I printed it, laminated it, taped it to the fridge. No Ray. No Raymond. No uncle. And yet, there he was, sending messages to my daughter like they were meeting regularly. Like this was normal. I opened the thread. I shouldn't have, but I did. And what I saw didn't look like innocent family banter. There were pictures, old ones. Polaroids. Scanned and sent. A man with dark, curly hair and a crooked smile. Always with someone else beside him, a younger Mara. My wife. In her 20s. Arms slung around his shoulders like it belonged there. In one photo, she was holding a pregnancy test. Positive. Grinning. He was kissing her cheek. The caption she'd written beneath it said, "We're gonna be parents. I'm so scared but so happy." That photo was sent to Lacey 2 months ago. I don't know how long I sat there with that phone in my hand, blinking through waves of nausea and disbelief. My heart wasn't just breaking, it was disintegrating. Every memory I thought was mine was now borrowed, secondhand, part of someone else's story I'd never been told. This wasn't just a lie. This was an alternate life, running parallel to mine for nearly 2 decades. Later that night, I confronted Mara. I didn't do it calmly. I wish I had. I was shaking, furious, asking who the hell Ray was and why our daughter thought he was her uncle. She didn't answer. She just sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor like it had just confessed something first. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, she said, "You were never supposed to know." That sentence, those 6 stupid, sharp words, felt like a hammer to the chest. I was never supposed to know. Because, as she told me next, Ray wasn't just her ex. He wasn't some fling. He was her fiancé, the man she had planned a life with before he left. Not died. Not moved away. He left her. Disappeared after she told him she was pregnant. No note. No call. Just silence. And in that silence, I had appeared. She said I was the safe choice. That I loved Lacey like she wished Ray had. That I filled a hole she didn't think would ever heal. She married me, but she never stopped loving him. And now? Now he was back, messaging their daughter, building a connection that I never got to choose, never got to question, never even got to know about until it was too late. But the worst part? Lacey already knew. She had known for nearly a year. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. Mara had gone silent after her half-confession, just curled up on the far side of the bed, facing the wall, like the truth was too ugly to look at now that it had claws. I couldn't bear to share a room with her, so I ended up in the garage. It was cold, it smelled like old paint, and I sat there in the driver's seat of my car with the engine off, just staring through the windshield into nothing. I was trying to figure out when exactly I became the backup plan in my own life. That's when I heard the door creak open. Soft footsteps. Lacey. She didn't say anything right away. Just stood there in the dark, wrapped in a hoodie 3 sizes too big, hugging herself like the air had turned to glass, and she didn't want to break it. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. My mind was spiraling in 100 directions, and every one of them ended in the same word. Why? Why didn't she tell me? Why the secrecy? Why the lies? She sat down on the dusty folding chair next to the shelf of holiday decorations. I could feel her staring at me, but I didn't budge. Not until she said something that caught me completely off guard. Dad, I found the box 2 summers ago. I didn't mean to. It was behind the water heater. At first, I had no idea what she was talking about. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I just turned and looked at her, finally, and saw something in her face I hadn't seen in a long time. Shame. Genuine, gut-punch shame. She said she had been looking for an old bike pump. Opened the cabinet in the back corner of the garage, the one no one ever touches because it's blocked by the heater and half covered in cobwebs, and there it was. A beat-up shoebox wrapped in duct tape. Inside were letters. Hundreds of them. All from Ray. Stacked neatly in order, postmarked across years I thought we'd been happy. All written to her. Some from before she was born. Some after. Some marked, returned to sender, unopened. Others yellowed and crinkled from age, but still sealed in envelopes addressed to Mara's maiden name. And Mara never threw them out. She kept them hidden, buried in the dust and shadows, but not destroyed. Because some part of her couldn't let go. And Lacey? She read every single one. I asked her why she didn't come to me, why she didn't say anything, and what she said next shattered whatever was left of my certainty. Because I thought you already knew. I thought you were just pretending, like she was. And I didn't want to be the one to say it out loud. That did something to me, twisted me up from the inside. My own daughter believed her entire life was a lie we were all quietly playing along with, like some warped family theater where the truth was just too impolite to mention. I asked if she had been talking to Ray behind my back. She nodded, slowly. Said he found her through one of those ancestry sites after she uploaded her DNA. Said he told her everything. That he'd changed. That he wanted to make up for the time he lost. And here's the real kicker. He told her he left not because he didn't want her, but because Mara told him not to come back. That was the moment I stopped being confused and started getting angry. Not the kind of angry you yell about. The kind that coils in your spine and makes every word taste like copper. Because for 17 years, I believed I was Plan A. But I wasn't. I was the cover-up. And now, the lie had grown legs. It was walking around in our house, eating our food, calling me Dad, with a voice full of guilt and confusion and half-buried truths. And still, there was something missing. A detail that didn't sit right. Something in the way Mara had said, "You were never supposed to know." Like she wasn't just scared of the truth itself, but of something else. The box was heavier than I expected. Not in weight, just in presence. Like it had been holding its breath for years and was finally exhaling the second I touched it. It was still right where Lacey said she found it, wedged behind the water heater and a stack of broken garden lights we never got around to throwing out. The cardboard was soft with time, the duct tape cracking at the edges like it had grown tired of sealing someone else's secrets. I didn't bring it inside. I sat on the garage floor like some desperate archaeologist digging through ruins I thought I built myself. Inside, the letters were neatly bundled with twine. Yellowed pages, fading ink. A few envelopes were smudged from what looked like water damage, maybe tears. Some weren't even sealed anymore. Others were crisp, pristine, like they'd been handled 1,000 times without ever being opened. But one caught my eye immediately. It wasn't stamped. It wasn't even sealed. just folded in half with a paperclip and a sticky note that read, "For Clive, if it ever comes to that." I just stared at it for a while. The air felt thicker, like the garage itself didn't want me to open it. But of course I did. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. My body wanted to vomit, but my mind needed to know. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The letter was from Ray. Handwritten. Sloppy, like he'd written it in one sitting, fueled by anger, grief, or maybe both. It wasn't long, but it hit harder than anything I'd read in my life. He said he hadn't disappeared. He was forced out. According to him, Mara gave him an ultimatum. Leave quietly and permanently, or she'd destroy him. She told him if he tried to get custody, she'd claim he was violent, that he'd hit her, that he was dangerous, that she had proof. He didn't say what that proof was, but he said she made it clear she wasn't bluffing. She even showed him a draft of a police report she never filed. He was 23 at the time, fresh out of a bad family himself. No support system. He said he panicked, that he believed her, that he didn't have the money, the strength, or the legal firepower to fight her and win. So he left, tried to disappear, tried to move on, but he never stopped writing letters. And eventually, when DNA testing got cheap and accessible, he took a chance and uploaded his results, hoping maybe someday the truth would find a crack to leak through. The photograph was the final nail. It was Mara, younger, pregnant, sitting on a hospital bed in a paper gown, holding a sonogram. Ray was next to her, smiling, but in the background, scribbled on the whiteboard, clear as day, was his full name under father. They were real. They were together, and they had planned this child. Until she replaced him with me. I put the photo down and just stared at the letter again. I read it over and over, as if the words might change, as if some part of it might turn out to be a misunderstanding. But it didn't. It was clear. Mara hadn't chosen me out of love. She'd chosen me out of strategy. And now the thing that haunts me most isn't that I raised someone else's child. It's that someone else wanted to, and was deliberately erased so I could be installed like a living cover story. I don't even know who I am in my own family anymore. Later that night, I asked Mara about the letter. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I just placed it on the kitchen table and waited for her to explain. She looked at it for a long time, then walked away without saying a word. And now I'm sitting in that same kitchen, alone, one hand on the letter, the other holding my wedding ring. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. But before I do, I'm going to confront Ray. In person. Because if I've been living someone else's life for 17 years, I want to meet the man who should have been in my place. I want to look him in the eye and ask him what he would have done differently. I didn't sleep. Again. I don't even know how many nights it had been at that point. Time had stopped operating like a normal thing. Meals became meaningless. The clocks just ticked for no one. All I could think about was that letter, the man behind it, and the fact that the life I thought I had built had never really belonged to me. It felt like someone had loaned me a family out of pity, then demanded it back, without warning. I found Ray through one of those ancestry sites. He had a public profile. A photo. A city 2 hours away. I sent a short message. I got the letter. We need to talk. In person. He replied within 20 minutes. Gave me an address to a diner on the edge of a highway. The kind of place where no one remembers your name, but everyone hears your conversation if you're loud enough. I don't know what I expected. Maybe someone smug, maybe someone bitter, or maybe someone broken. But when I walked in and saw him, sitting alone, coffee untouched, just watching the door like he'd been waiting his whole life for this, I felt something weird. I felt small. He looked like someone who had aged twice as fast. Not just older, but heavier with time. His shoulders drooped in a way that told me he'd carried too much for too long. And still, the second he saw me, he stood up, stuck out his hand, and said my name like we were old classmates. Clive, thanks for coming. He was polite, careful, but not afraid. We sat, ordered nothing. Neither of us came to eat. There was a silence at first. Not awkward, just necessary. Like the air had to settle before words could work. I told him I read the letter. He nodded, waited. I told him I believed it. He looked relieved for a second. Then, guilty. And then I asked him the question that had been clawing at me since the garage. Why now? Why come back? After all these years? His answer was quiet, steady. Because I thought she changed. And because Lacey deserves to know both sides of the story. He didn't blame me. Not once. He actually thanked me. Said he used to check the town records just to make sure Lacey was still enrolled in school, still healthy, still alive. He said he knew Mara had married again, knew she gave Lacey my last name, knew she had erased every trace of him from her life, like he was some bad dream. But the worst part? He claimed Mara used him again, just last year. He told me she reached out to him, not the other way around. She had messaged him through a burner account, told him Lacey had been asking questions, and she didn't want to deal with it. She offered him a deal, reconnect with Lacey under the lie that he had just found her, act surprised, keep it quiet. She even gave him photos to prove he was who he said he was. I asked why he agreed. He didn't even hesitate, because I thought maybe this time she wanted to do right by her. And maybe, if I played along, I could finally be part of her life. That shook me, because that meant Mara hadn't just lied. She had engineered both of us. She handed me the father role like it was a script, and then passed a secret backstage note to the original actor when she got bored with the play. Ray looked me in the eye and said something I'll never forget. You were the better man. But she never wanted a better man. She wanted a controllable one. That line hit me like a truck. Because deep down, I'd always wondered why Mara never fought with me like other couples fought. Why she never seemed passionate or angry or vulnerable. She kept everything neat, curated. But now I saw it. It wasn't peace. It was control. And I was just another piece of furniture in her tidy little exhibit of what life was supposed to look like. And here was Ray, the chaos she buried. The one part of herself she couldn't tame, so she removed it. Not out of fear, out of spite. We talked for over an hour. He gave me copies of messages Mara had sent him. Proof. Timelines. Even the name of the lawyer she threatened him with back then, someone I now recognized as her cousin's husband. Everything clicked. Everything fell apart. The truth wasn't just painful, it was methodical. Engineered. And the worst part? Ray told me he'd backed off again. Said Lacey had stopped replying to his messages after I found out. He looked genuinely hurt by it. Said he thought maybe she blamed him again. But I told him the truth. That she didn't blame him. That she just didn't know what to feel anymore. That none of us did. When I got home, Mara was gone. No note. No call. Just an empty closet. And one email, sent 3 hours earlier, titled, "I'm sorry I let it get this far." No body of text. Just the subject line. And suddenly, the story took a turn I didn't expect. Because I wasn't the only one she had lied to recently. I didn't report her missing. Not right away. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's cowardice. Or maybe, on some level, I knew she wasn't missing at all. Mara didn't do chaos. She didn't do breakdowns or melodrama. Everything she did was precise, even her exits. So when I saw that single subject line email and the hollow space where her clothes used to be, I knew it wasn't fear driving her out the door. It was strategy. Again, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the ring she didn't even bother to leave behind, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered. But something in me said, pick it up. Now. A woman's voice, trembling but sharp. "Clive? This is Ella. I'm Mara's sister." I didn't even know she had a sister. I sat up straight, instinctively glancing at the front door as if Mara might walk through it, scolding me for answering her calls. I asked slowly, cautiously, "How did you get my number?" "I saw your name on one of Mara's medical forms. From before." "Look, I don't have time to explain everything. But please, don't report her missing. Not yet." That made my stomach turn. Not because of what she said, but how she said it. Not desperate. Not panicked. Almost practiced. Like someone who'd said it before. "What's going on?" I asked. There was a long pause on the other end. And then she said something I'll never forget. She's done this before. Changed her name. Burned the trail. Walked away from entire lives like they were old coats. "You're not the first." I couldn't speak. Ella went on. Said Mara's real name wasn't Mara. It was Lizette Mallory. Born in Oregon. Moved around constantly as a teenager. No criminal record, but a pattern. Short stints in new towns, intense relationships, then sudden exits. New identity. New job. New story. "I found her again by accident 6 years ago," Ella said. "Through a mutual friend's Facebook photo. I recognized her instantly. She looked older, but that face, it's burned into my brain. She was holding a little girl. I think that was Lacey. But by the time I messaged the account, it was deleted." I told her about the DNA test. About Ray. About the shoebox. The coffee cup. The letter. Ella wasn't surprised. She sighed like someone who had been carrying too much for too long and said, "That sounds exactly like her." She only tells enough truth to keep people close. But she's always holding a back door open. Then she told me something that changed the game entirely. Before Mara, Lizette, met me, she had another family. A real one. Husband. Son. Small apartment outside Seattle. But something happened. No one knows what, not even Ella. One day, she just disappeared. Took the baby. Left the man a goodbye note and vanished. There were no police reports filed. No custody case. No investigation. Because she left before anything could start. That son, his name was Caleb. And he'd be 20 now. Ella only knew about it because she received a single postcard 5 years later with no return address and a line that read, "Tell Caleb I did what I had to do. One day he'll understand." But Ella never did. And now she was calling me not just because she wanted to warn me, but because she'd gotten another message that morning. An anonymous email, no subject line, no signature. Just 3 words. "It's happening again." That was it. She believed it was from Mara. I asked her where she thought Mara would go, and she gave me a name I'd never heard before, Halston Bay, a small coastal town in Northern California. Ella said it was the only place Mara ever spoke about like it meant something. Said she went there once as a child, and that it felt like a place you could disappear into. I don't know what possessed me, but I got in my car and started driving. 8 hours straight. No bags. No plan. Just questions. Because if Mara had done this before, if she had a trail of broken families, vanished names, and discarded lives, then what we had wasn't just a betrayal. It was a pattern, and I needed to know how deep it went. Halston Bay wasn't a real town. Not in the way most people would define one. It was more like a memory someone forgot to finish. Quiet roads that led nowhere, gas stations with dust-covered bottles of soda and fridges that barely hummed. The beach was gray. Not stormy, just faded. Like even the ocean had agreed to keep its voice down out of respect for whatever people came here to disappear. The drive there had unraveled me. 8 hours of highway hypnosis, thoughts blurring into one another like fog over pavement. I kept playing the past on loop in my head. Every glance Mara had ever given me, every soft, "I love you," every quiet morning, and wondering which parts were real and which were rehearsed. It was like watching my own memories through a two-way mirror, and I was no longer sure which side I was on. I pulled into a roadside motel around noon the next day. It was the kind of place that smelled like wet wood and old TV static. 2 stories, 10 rooms, maybe less. The parking lot was cracked and curling at the edges. A handwritten sign on the front door said, "Ring bell for service." I rang. A man eventually shuffled in from a back office, probably in his 60s, wearing a grease-stained t-shirt with the name Walt stitched above the pocket. His eyes were tired, but sharp. He looked at me like he'd already sized me up before I spoke. I asked if anyone named Mara, or Lizette, had checked in over the past few days. He shook his head no. I started to explain. He cut me off. "Don't need the name," he said. "I know who you're talking about." That made my skin go cold. He pulled out a binder from under the desk, an actual binder, like from the 90s. Flipped it open, scanned a few pages, and stopped at one. Then he turned it around slowly. She had checked in 3 days earlier. Paid cash. Used the name Claire Jennings. But the photo ID she gave didn't match the name. Walt said he didn't push it. People came to Halston Bay for 2 reasons, fishing or forgetting. And she wasn't carrying a tackle box. She looked like she hadn't slept in a year, he said. Eyes darting. Asked for the room at the end. The one with the back door. That was room 9. I asked if she was still here. He looked out the window, toward the line of rooms half hidden behind a row of salt-bitten shrubs, and gave a small, almost regretful shake of the head. She left early this morning. Just before dawn. Didn't say goodbye. But she had left something behind. A key. Not to the room, but to a locker at the Halston Bay bus station. I didn't even have to ask for it. Walt slid it across the counter without a word. Maybe he saw something in my eyes. Maybe he'd seen it before. I drove to the station, which was barely more than a bench and a coffee machine. The lockers were old, mechanical, rusted. Mine was in the far corner, just beneath a flickering light. The key stuck for a second, then gave way with a click. Inside was a shoebox. Again, but this one wasn't sealed. No duct tape. No attempts to hide. Just a folded piece of hotel stationery with my name on it in handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened the letter. It wasn't from Mara. It was from Caleb, her son, the one she had run away with 20 years ago. The letter was short. detached, almost clinical in tone, but it landed like a gut punch. If you're reading this, she's gone again. I'm not sure if she told you anything, but I'm not looking for her. Not anymore. I stopped chasing ghosts a long time ago. I just wanted to give you a warning. She doesn't love people. She uses them. She makes you feel like the center of her world until you start to ask questions, and then she cuts the string. It took me years to undo what she did to my head. You don't need to be next. Walk away. Burn what you found. Start over. Trust me, you'll never find the bottom of her. There was a photograph paperclip to the back. It was a little boy, maybe 5 years old, sitting on a swing. Mara was behind him, holding the chains. Her hair was different, shorter, redder, but the smile was the same. Warm, alive, completely fake. I sat there for a long time, not crying, not angry, just hollow, because it wasn't just that she lied. It wasn't just that she rewrote her history. It was that she had recycled her love, reused the same words, same looks, same touches for every version of her life like a script she knew would land. And I was just another scene. By the time I got back to the motel, Walt had already rented out room 9. The bedsheets were stripped. The bathroom light was on. And the back door, just like he said, was left slightly open, swaying in the breeze. When I pulled back into the driveway, it was just after midnight. The house looked the same from the outside. Porch lights still flickering from that storm months ago, weeds curling around the steps, the faint hum of the fridge audible even from outside if you listened close enough. And yet, everything felt different. I didn't go inside right away. I just sat in the car, engine ticking as it cooled, key still in the ignition. The key to the bus station locker was in my other hand. Cold metal, still holding on. I wasn't ready to let it go. Eventually I got out and went in. Lacey was sitting at the kitchen table. She hadn't gone to bed. She didn't ask where I'd been. Didn't need to. The look on her face told me she'd pieced together more than I ever could have said out loud. Maybe she'd found another letter. Maybe she just knew, the way kids do when they grow up too fast in houses filled with secrets. I sat across from her and placed the photo of Mara and Caleb on the table. No words, just a quiet offering. A final puzzle piece she never asked for, but deserved to see. She looked at it for a long time. Her eyes didn't well up. Her hands didn't shake. She just nodded once, like something inside her had clicked into place. And then she said, "You're still my dad, you know?" That didn't change. I lost it then. Not the kind of loud, dramatic crying you see in movies, just a silent collapse. Head in hands. A release I didn't know I'd been holding in for 17 years. She came around the table and hugged me. Tight. Fierce. Like she was the one keeping me from falling apart now. We didn't talk much after that. Not that night. We didn't need to. Some wounds are too deep for words, but shallow enough to heal if someone just sits with you long enough. Over the next few weeks, the house slowly reshaped itself. Mara's things, the ones she didn't take, were boxed up. Some donated. Some tossed. I didn't burn anything. I thought about it. But fire doesn't fix the past. It only hides the ashes. Instead, I repainted the bedroom. Lacey picked the color. A soft, strange blue that shifts shades depending on the light. Calming, but never boring. She said it felt like something new. I agreed. We started a garden in the backyard. Just tomatoes at first. Then peppers. Then flowers. Lacey wanted to plant a lemon tree. I told her we didn't have the right soil. She said we'd make it work. And we are. The key to the locker? I still carry it. Not because I expect to use it again, but because it reminds me of something important. That the truth always lives somewhere, even if you have to drive 8 hours and open a rusted metal door to find it. Ray and I email sometimes. He's slow to write back, careful with his words. But he's there. And Lacey? She messages him occasionally too. On her own terms. No pressure. Just curiosity and space. 2 things she was never given before. And she's handling it better than I ever could have imagined. I still don't know if Mara is out there, spinning a new version of herself for someone else. Part of me hopes she finds peace. Another part hopes she stops before another life gets caught in her web. But mostly, I just don't think about her anymore. The house is quieter now, but it finally feels like mine. Our laughter fills the rooms again. Our mess. Our noise. Our imperfect, healing little rhythm. I'm not the man I was when this story started. I'm not the man I thought I was, either. But I'm still here. Still standing. And somehow, after all of it, we're okay.